This episode is in partnership with Authority Magazine. Authority Magazine, a Medium publication, is devoted to sharing in-depth and interesting interviews featuring people who are authorities in business, pop culture, wellness, social impact, and tech.
My co-host today is Al Joins. For close to 28 years, Al was a popular on-air personality and radio announcer at Q107 Radio. He is also prominent for his work as a voiceover artist for movie trailers, music videos, and other productions. Al is a narrator of The Ones show, where he gets to combine his lifelong love of all things Beatles with a whimsical sense of humor. And quite coincidentally, which I think is really cool today, we have guest Brian West. I think that'll be a really interesting conversation between the two of them. Brian West has been living and breathing radio since high school, turning his passion into an impressive career spanning multiple stations and roles, from morning shows to voiceovers and even cartoons. He's got the kind of voice you've probably heard without even realizing it. Brian, welcome to Believe in People.
Wow, thank you for having me. This is great.
Well, first of all, so I did the intro before you two came on, and I was laughing because I was looking at your bios, and they're almost identical. Q107, Q108, like it's hilarious. And then your voiceover. So I was kind of going to ask you to do like the battle of the voices.
I think I'll lose. On that one.
No.
Like seriously, it's hilarious. Brian, why radio?
Why radio?
Yeah.
Boy, that's a good question. You know, I have to give credit to a co-op teacher I had in grade 11 in high school, because I grew up in Ottawa, and at the time that I was in high school, high tech was really booming. Computer programmers and all that kind of stuff were all the thing that people were going to get into. And when co-op came about, I was like, I don't know that I could just sit behind a computer, programming all day. I just don't know that it's me, and I didn't know what other industry to try out. And I was in a high school band, like a little rock band that we had at the time. So my co-op teacher was like, you're in a band, why don't you co-op at a radio station? And I thought, that's great, I'll get my music on the air, this is perfect. And I found out quickly that that's not how it works. And I didn't get my music on the air, but I got into the station and I got the co-op placement, and I just saw how cool it was at a radio station. Like, a lot of people are just familiar with the on-air people at a radio station, but there's so many more people that go into making it work every day. And I got to learn all the different departments, and I was just like, this is awesome. And so, sitting in with one of the midday hosts, his name is Stuntman Stu in Ottawa. He was a radio guy for years and years and years. And I sat in with him on the midday show, and he was like, Algonquin College in Ottawa has a great radio program. He went to it. He recommended it. And so I went into it, and it's when I loved school for like the first time was when I was in college, and I had so much fun doing it, and that's how it started.
Wow.
Yeah, I agree, Brian. After high school, I of course I go back a few more years, but the year that
There weren't high schools back then.
It was, well, believe it or not, right? But it was the first year that the Scarborough Board of Education went on strike. So I was in grade 13. So I started DJing at that time. But I applied at Ryerson not thinking that I'd ever get in because, it was a crazy year. And I too, Brian, had the best 3 years of my life. I suddenly enjoyed what I was doing. I was acing production, and all that kind of stuff. And I was, at the place I was supposed to be. So I totally understand. Yeah.
It makes a big difference, right? When you really enjoy what you're doing.
For sure, it does.
When you're learning about something you're really into. And like you said, I got some of the best marks I ever got in a school program in college as well, just like in production rooms and, working on things. It was so much fun.
And it's funny because so I'm so excited because we have the two greatest, I don't know what you call DJs anymore, right? You don't say, what do you say? What do you say?
Yeah.
On-air personalities?
Yep,
that works.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. And then, how did the voiceover work? Does that just happen for the two of you? Like, does that just happen, Brian?
It doesn't just happen. No, there's a lot of people who think that they can just do that because they were maybe on the radio, but there's there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, acting, it's voice acting really, and acting skills, taking acting classes is really important.
Huh.
I mean, when you're in the radio station, you do local commercials, and that is how I got started as well. And I think how most people get started is part of your job is to, do the local car commercial or whatever client has bought time on the radio, and you'll do those spots. And then for me, I was like, I always wanted to be in a cartoon, even when I was, um, cartoon was what I wanted to do even long before radio. And so when I started doing radio and started doing commercials, and then I found out that there was this whole other side to voiceovers, I was like, I want to try and do that as well. And that's how I sort of started to get into it.
Wow. Al, does this sound familiar?
Definitely. Before I got into Q107, I was doing stuff with Dome Productions and voiceovers. I did some work as a prompter. I worked for a company called CompuPrompt, and what we did was we went into productions and did the telecom. What is it? The telecom for the actors to read off it.
Oh, the teleprompter.
The prompter. Oh yeah.
Teleprompter, that's it. Yep. And I did that for 4 or 5 years. I worked with the Muppets and all that in Toronto, and all these
Wow.
Wow.
different independent things. So I did a few voiceovers at that time as well. When I was at Q107, I was probably pretty much exclusive there, although I did some stuff for Yuck Yucks and all that. But yeah, it's not easy, is it, Brian? It's not easy to get in. You
No.
got, you know, first of all, if you can grab a manager or an agent, I guess that's cool. I never really had an agent, so I did a lot of stuff on my own. But I think if you really, really want to, pursue a full-time career, you need help with that. I
Yeah,
think
representation I think is
representation.
key. Yeah, yeah, just to help you get a lot of those auditions that you might not otherwise see, because a lot of the casting directors will go to agents and say, "Do you have anybody on your roster that fits this spec that we're
Yeah.
looking for?" And that's how you get the chance to audition. So I think it's important. But people always ask me, "How do I get into voiceover? How do I want to do it too? How do I get into it?" And the thing I always say first is coaching is where you should start, whether it's acting classes or voice coaching. And I want to start taking singing classes because again, with cartoons that I always wanted to do, a lot of cartoons sing, and I'm a terrible singer. I'm so bad. I don't know if I can be taught even, but I'm thinking about trying to take some singing lessons to see if that'll help me at all.
Oh, that's great. And I want to sort of, this doesn't really segue, but I want to sort of jump into what's your favorite, do you have any favorite interviews? Like what's the something people that you really loved interviewing?
Ooh. I think the first like really big interview I ever did was Slash from Guns N' Roses.
Cool.
And that was really cool. I remember being like super nervous because again, when I was in a band in high school, like we used to cover Guns N' Roses songs, and so he was just such like a rock star, right? He is a rock star, and so to interview him, I remember being really really nervous. So he would be one of them. Anthony Kiedis from the Red Hot Chili Peppers was another one that another big rock star that I interviewed, and I really remember interviewing Chris Cornell not too long before he passed away, probably within a year or so before he passed away. I had an opportunity to interview him when he
Wow.
played in Toronto, and so I remember that one as well.
It always seemed that people were traveling through Toronto, and we got some real good ones, sharing an elevator with Lenny Kravitz or whatever, and it's kind
Did you
of
share
thing.
an elevator with Lenny Kravitz?
Yeah, when we were down at Yonge and Finch, I guess we were in the middle of Shepherd and Finch. Um, we get and we get all kinds of people coming up, but for me, it was probably the members of Yes, John Anderson and Steve Howe, Burton Cummings, Kim Mitchell. Before I worked with Kim, of course, for his tenure there at Q and my tenure, and
Oh, yeah,
so I
that's
was
right.
lucky that way. A lot of neat people came through the queue for sure. Yeah, over the years.
Yeah, for sure, right? And hey, Brian, so I imagine, look, there's so many up and coming musicians, and they desperately want to be heard. There's only so much time, and there's regulations, I imagine, and all of that. First of all, how do you handle that? How do do you feel for the musicians? Can you give them some advice? Like, I mean, this is tough to get your stuff out there.
Yeah, and I was just talking to Ryan, who's the lead singer of a band called Mother Mother, a couple of weeks ago before their gig, and I was asking him sort of the same question because I often will ask the bands that question, like, what advice do you have for younger up and coming bands? And he was saying like social media for them, TikTok specifically, like some of their songs blew up on TikTok without them even pushing it. And he was telling me how that was, all of a sudden around the world, people are hearing your music. So I guess in 2025 now, social media is huge, but there's so many people doing it. So I think it's similar to, I would imagine, if you can get representation, the same sort of thing as we were talking about with voiceover, someone who can push your songs to radio and to booking agents. I would imagine that would be an avenue to try and take if you
Yeah.
can. And I think just like anything, the bigger following you get, the more eyes will be on you, and that'll get people's attention. So I guess gigging in different towns and just trying to get people to know who you are and recognize your songs.
I think with the internet, we got a leg up. I think back in the day, you really had to, send the record companies all your information, have them come out to your gigs, this, that, and the other. And and the A&R guys still do it. I see people out here and there, looking at certain bands and that kind of thing. But I think for the independent musician, such as Tommy Gunn, that at least there is an avenue to start now with social media, as Brian was saying, that there's your leg up, or at least get your music started there, so that people will notice it. And I think live, it will always be the way that people will decide whether they like you or not.
Mm.
If they like you live, they're going to want to hear you hear your stuff. That's what I've found over the years anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, right. And what about, okay, so I'm just going to ask you, you don't have to tell me, this is, we're recorded here. Any bribes? Have you two ever received a bribe to play, for have somebody play their music?
I don't think I
Unfortunately,
have.
no. Uh, there was always lunches. Record companies would bring their act up. They would,
The martini lunches.
and the Swiss Chalet, and this kind of stuff. Or you'd go
Swiss
out to the,
chalet.
you go out to the bars, and they'd buy you beers or your drinks, or what have you. But never any of the cash. Never got any of that.
No.
Not that I
No,
wanted it.
of course not. Of course. Okay, I want to ask you, Brian, what's changed? You've been in the industry a long time, Al even longer. What has changed in the
Lots. I mean, even just from an on-air announcer's point of view, like when I started, we were on CDs already. I started in like 2001 is when I first was on the air, and we were playing CDs, but going like song to song on you had like 3 or 4 CD players, and at the time they were just like the splitters were just, and the commercials were just had migrated onto the computer. So you'd go from like CD player to computer. There was no Facebook statuses to update, no social media to worry about, but you were like, changing the songs, which I thought was fun. Mixing the splitter with the next song, going from CD to CD, a CD skipping, and you going, oh crap, and trying to fix it, and pulling music for the next person's shift. You would pull all the music for the person who was coming in after you. So you were kind of like busy that way. Whereas now with everything running off the computer, you think that you might just be sitting there, but now you're on social media, and you're updating your Facebook or the station's Facebook and the different social media platforms, and creating videos that are going to go on social media. Like there's more to it now than just coming on after the song and introducing the next song. Now there's all this extra content that we create.
wow.
And I think that's really healthy. I think instead of us sitting in the chair, staring out the window trying to figure out our next break, at least we're answering our listener. We're showing them the radio station more than when cameras first came in to Q107. I hated it. I don't want to be on. I don't want to be on. I got a face for radio. This is radio. But I understand now the excitement of a listener seeing us, Brian, seeing what we're doing in there, and that we're not just whirling around in our chair waiting for the break, but
Yeah.
and I think that it's in 2025 thing that I missed the most, and I'm showing my age here, but I started with vinyl. Putting the vinyl on, and I'm sure Brian, you would have had a wonderful time. Doing that, and then we converted to CD, like you said. We did sort of half and half. Q didn't go to CD for a while. It was until it was really established, and that's when I came in around '87 or so, and then of course now it's all on the computer, but it gives me more time to think with the internet and the information that's available to us. I think we pass that along more to the listener now than we ever have. You know.
And yeah, and like you said, it's a great way for people to interact through social media, or like now we have the text line where a lot of people would rather text in than try and call in, where they might get a busy signal or something, and now they know that they can just text in and the text flood in, and we try to get back to as many people as we can, again because we're not changing the songs, the computer's doing that, so it gives us a little extra time.
Oh, that's right. That's wild. Hey, Brian, what were you like as a kid?
In what way? In
Just
school or in
no, just kind of, you being you, your
yeah,
parents, your siblings, if you had any, that kind of thing.
I have an older
Just a
sister.
picture.
Yeah, her and I get along now. When we were kids, not so much. I think as brothers and sisters, probably fight a lot. I was, it's funny because I'm pretty shy. Like I was a pretty shy kid, and I'm still shy. When I have to go and MC things, I get nervous going on stage. I mean, the one good thing about emceeing a band or something like that is everyone's there to see the band. So they don't care about me. I just go up and, hey, you ready for the band? And everybody's like, woo, they're all excited to see whoever's coming on. So that's, like emceeing a wedding. A lot of people have asked me to MC weddings over the
Oh, wow.
years, and I hate it. I don't like doing it because I know the people in the room usually, and I get really nervous, and so I was a pretty shy kid. I mean, I did win public speaking in grade 6
Wow.
um, back then, in my class and in my school. I was, I guess, pretty good at speaking, but I was shy. I didn't like it. I hated it. But with my friends, I would be like the jokester. I would joke around with them, and yeah, I guess that's sort of what I was like as a kid.
I had two sisters, right? So, and I'm the youngest. But with me, when I was 8 years old, I wanted to get into radio. I mean, I grew up in Toronto radio,
Wow.
and God, I when I got my first tape recorder at age 9, it was like I am going to use this. And I wore out probably three or four of them until I was, 14 or 15 years old. But I never went on the air until I was at Ryerson. And I just, I wanted to get in there and all that kind of stuff. But as a kid, I was a class clown. I tried to make people laugh and usually succeeded at my expense. I music was always forefront with me. I play a little bit. I play guitar, not very well, but I like to noodle and all that kind of stuff. But my thing was PR was with the band. I would do the lights and the sound, and I'd get people interested in that kind of stuff. So I knew that I was going to be involved somehow. Um, and I didn't want to leave Toronto, so that's why I got into radio,
Right.
because
That's right. So you didn't have
one
to
of the
travel.
bands that I worked with was Zon. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, Brian. They had 3 or 4 albums out, but they started to travel, in the U.S. and all that. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't know why, but I just wasn't into that. So that's why I got into radio, basically. So,
Wow, that's
and I love
cool.
it.
Hey, Brian, do you play an instrument?
Again, yes, but not well. I have some guitars. When I was in a band in high school, I played bass guitar, so I can play bass guitar pretty well. And then after that, I got a drum kit and just sort of self-taught myself to play drums. And like electric guitar would be the worst thing I'm good at. But bass guitar, drums, and like I said, singing. Like I said earlier, like I'm a terrible singer. Not good at all. Karaoke bars like clear out if I ever go into
Oh,
one.
that's hilarious. And what's your
I don't think
favorite
I've ever sang
aspect?
at a karaoke thing.
No,
No?
you've never sung at a karaoke,
I have.
really?
My wife has, but I just kind of, oh yeah, no, no, I'm good. Give me another drink,
Wow, that's hilarious. What? And so is it luck, do you think, gentlemen? Is it luck where you're at? Or was it skill? Was it a combination? What was it? Because were in really great positions being in what you've done for so long. Brian, is it luck?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of right place, right time, and hard work and networking is really important. And I mean, I have been lucky that I've moved quite a few times to different stations, and sometimes I've moved, and then like the station I moved from would flip formats, and I'd be like, "Woo," I got out of there before they flipped formats, and ended up getting new people. So yeah, luck is definitely part of it, and networking is huge. I mean, Al, the industry is so small, and burning bridges can be I mean, maybe terrible for your career. I think that I probably almost know somebody in every province in Canada working in radio now just because of moving around and
You've moved around that much, huh? Tell
all
us what was. I,
all within Ontario for me. Like, so I'm from Ottawa, and I started in Ottawa, and I was there for a few years, and then I moved to Kingston for my first full-time job, and that's when I started with Chorus, which was like 21 years ago, I guess.
oh,
And from there, I moved to the GTA, and I worked in Hamilton, and then I worked in Kitchener, and then now I'm back in Hamilton and filling in Toronto, and so it's all been in Ontario for me to just sort of moving down the 401, and now I do a show in London and in Barrie, and it's
that's busy.
again, yeah, it is, and you get to know people at all these stations though, and then they move, and they maybe move across the country. So I think that's why if I went to any province, I could go to a radio station and have a connection with somebody.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, I think talent too, Brian. I think if we weren't as good at what we did, we wouldn't last long. Because I know a few people that really wanted to get into it, and they just didn't have the drive and maybe
True.
the ambition that some of us have. And I was on and off 30 years with Q107. I went to various, we were with one company with one, and then we ended up with Chorus. I really started in Calgary. Born and raised in Toronto, but went to three stations in Calgary over a course of time. So I really cut my teeth there. That's where I made all my mistakes, and it's like ready to come back now. And what stuff are you doing in Toronto, Brian? So I can listen.
Yeah, well, so this weekend coming up when this is being recorded,
Right.
I'm filling in on the Edge on the weekends. So I'm doing like the noon to 6 slot on the Edge. I fill in on Q107 in evenings or weekends, sort of whenever they need me. So those are the two stations in Toronto that I would be on.
Fantastic. I'm at Giant FM now with my broadcasting. I
Oh,
broadcast out of this studio here. I'll go to Welland every once in a while. I don't want to reveal my secrets, but a lot of it's done here.
nice.
But Coburg, I fill in mornings and afternoons, and I'm doing afternoons there. But I do that live. I'll drive there from my house to Coburg. So I just find myself extremely lucky at my age to be doing what I'm doing, and I'm grateful to, as Brian said, to all my contacts and people that I got to know over the years and love. And I think the listeners have a big thing to do with it as well. Um, our
Absolutely.
popularity and are willing to do what we're doing. Work weekends, work all nights, work this. Like my wife's family used to. Al, what time do you have to get up today? It's like, well, I'll be up at 3 a.m. So I could be at the station and they'd be so, oh my God, what do you, but I loved it. I mean, I still do. I, get up to go to Coburg at 4 a.m. in the morning. So yeah, I think it's a lot of luck,
Yikes.
talent, and networking.
No
Yeah.
kidding, right? And Brian, what time, what's your day like? I know we're going to wrap pretty soon, but what's your day like usually,
My
time
days
wise?
my days now is so after I drop my kids off at school in the morning, there's a show that I do in Barrie that starts at 9. It's a midday show that starts at 9 there. So I do that show. I prep for it, and then I do that show. And then after that, I have two afternoon shows that I do. One is in London, one is in Hamilton. They're sort of like a simulcast. It's like one's sort of like live to tape just before the show actually starts, and then one is completely live. So I do those two shows, and then in between that, I've usually got scripts coming in from producers at various different stations saying, they have a commercial that needs to get done. Can I read it for them? So I'll do that. I've got auditions coming in for my voiceover business that I try and get done as soon as possible. And then I sort of
Do it
wrap my
all
day
over
at
again.
6 and then do it over again the next day. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I want to ask you before I ask the last question is what's your favorite, what would be your ideal, we have connections here. What would be your ideal or favorite cartoon character that you'd like to do a voiceover on?
Well, I mean, I grew up watching The Simpsons, so that would be like an all-time, you know,
Good to
show to
know.
be on. That would be huge. And then, I mean, Disney movies would be massive as well. Like that's shooting for the stars with one of those movies. But again, I grew up watching those big ones that came out especially in the 90s, like Aladdin and The Lion King and stuff like that. I was younger in those days, and Disney, Simpsons, that would be huge.
Okay, good to know. This is good to know. Really good to know. And I want to ask because we ask everyone at the end of our show, because this is called Believe in People, but I'm going to switch it up. And I want to ask Brian and then Al, why do you believe in the music?
Why do I believe in the music? I'd say that, I know music comes from a very personal place for the people who write it, and often they're putting all their feelings out there. And I think that that's, to be vulnerable like that and put yourself out to the world. And people are so critical. So, when you're writing something that's your own and you're doing something that you've created and putting it out there for people to listen to, and people relate to what you're saying or how the feeling of the song is, and music tends to bring everybody together, and that's why I think it's so beautiful and it's such a wonderful art.
That's great.
And from
Thank
an
you.
independent point of view, I enjoy discovering um, the new music. From a classic point of view, it's like a timestamp. You hear a song, you go, "Oh man," like I remember what I was doing when I was, and especially us, Brian, when we're in the
Yeah.
studio and we're listening to all this music. There's always songs that stand out, and it's like, and if I hear them again, I'll go, "Oh wow, I remember I was here for that." So I think for emotional reasons, for entertainment, and for curiosity as well. I think that's where it stands with me. I just love to hear, new stuff. I'm just totally into it.
Do
That's
you,
great.
Al, do you remember the first song you ever talked after on like a commercial station?
Yeah, the first song
Yeah, that you either
was
talked over or talked after.
Sticks by Babe, or Babe by Sticks, not
Oh
Sticks.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Get out.
That's
You
that's
actually remember that?
That's late 70s. Well, because it was like my first, I did Ryerson and Ryerson Radio. I know we got to wrap this in a sec, but my first radio station was Oshawa at CKAR. So I was on a commercial radio station after being on, being cool on, Ryerson Radio. Here I
Yeah.
was doing top 40. So yeah, it was Babe, like,
Wow.
what
Brian, what was
about you,
yours?
Brian?
Mine was Joan Jett, I Love Rock and Roll. And again, I was playing it off CD. And you know how at the end of the song, it just keeps going? I love rock and roll. Put another, and it keeps going and going, repeating that. And
You can sing.
no, see, and I was watching the countdown on the CD player, and I was waiting, and it kept repeating, and I was so nervous. And I still to this day remember that feeling of waiting for that song to end so that I could jump on.
For
Oh, that's
sure.
great. Thank you
Exciting.
so much for your time, Brian. We are so grateful.
Well, thanks for having
And
me.
I'm
It was
so glad
great.
the two of you connected. That's amazing.
Oh, it's a
Yeah,
pleasure, Brian. I hope we meet in the future sometime.
absolutely. Same.
Somewhere. Now we'll know each other.
Exactly.
Exactly. Exactly. Thanks.
Networking.
Thanks
Yeah.
so much. Yeah, networking. Thanks, Brian. Have the best day.
Thank you. You guys too. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Thank you.
Amy, that was a really cool interview with Brian West. Brian and I have a lot in common. Of course, I think he's 20 years younger than I am, but the careers were parallel. Like we're on the same is it trajectory, or we're on the same
Yeah.
kind of path as each other, and doing like the amount of shows that he's doing. I mean, I do two. If he's doing four, and every day, it's quite the experience, and I'm glad that Brian West is doing that. It was a pleasure to meet him.
And I'm really jived that two of you met, and it's sort of just seeing like, the journeys. It's so fascinating. And as I mentioned in the beginning, when I was doing the intro, I thought, oh my God, this is like mini mini you. It was like,
Right.
it was so wild. So and it's inspiring. It's inspiring because you love what you do. It's clear and it shows, so thank you for believing in the music and us, and and really appreciate your time being here as a co-host. Thank you so much, Al. And if you've enjoyed this episode, then subscribe to Believe in People, because we believe in you. Thanks.